Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull. I do some work for the HBAR Foundation, but for these interviews, the opinions expressed are just those of my guests and I, not the foundation. Today, we're going to delve more into the Hedera gaming ecosystem with the CEO of Dropper, Eric Faust, and we're also going to welcome back Alex Russman from the HBAR Foundation. Guys, thanks so much for coming.
Great to be here again, Brandon.
Glad to be here, Brandon.
All right. So, just to jump right into it, Eric, before we get into Dropper, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a full-time crypto guy since 2017. Once upon a time, we saw the glorious ICO boom, and that really went up in smoke in sort of end of 2018. Just basically, my partners and I saw gaming as like the next frontier for crypto back then, and what is now NFTs. Out of 2019, we actually launched our company Realm Technologies at TwitchCon. We were actually doing in-game NFTs on like an Amazon QLDB blockchain thing once upon a time. So we've been in the gaming space since 2019. We've bounced around. We've done a whole bunch of things from in-game NFTs to launching esports leagues, tournaments, etc. So our background is essentially my team and I have been full-time crypto since pretty early days, and I think 2019 is when we sort of really embarked on the whole, gaming as the future of crypto.
All right. So, now can you explain the history behind Dropper and what it is that Dropper does?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, at the beginning of 2021, we were running a bunch of these sports tournaments and leagues with a sister company, and we had a whole bunch of teams and orgs come to us so they sort of remembered what we did in 2019 and with NFTs before anybody knew what an NFT was. And we had a whole bunch of these guys started to come to us and say like, hey, we want to do stuff in the NFT space. We've seen what NBA Top Shot has done, etc. So there's this really keen interest around how esports could move on chain. I think like the biggest secret in esports is that nobody makes any money. It's like run on investor dollars. Teams try to get like sponsor dollars in, et cetera, et cetera. So they really looked at this as like, hey, is there an opportunity for us to essentially create sustainable revenue models? So in 2021, Dropper was born. We started working with high-end gaming talent to basically foray and run a bunch of experiments trying to figure out like, hey, what does on-chain gaming look like? Where is the value add for guys like developers, publishers? Where is the value add for streamers, esport teams, etc.? And really, how do they monetize, right? Like that's what everyone's really interested in is A, how do we monetize, and B, how can this be an extension of our community? So I think that's really how Dropper was born. We started out launching on layer twos like Polygon, etc. Realized really quickly we launched this kid named Clicks, who's like Fortnite's biggest, probably their top streamer. Gets 15,000 concurrents, on a Tuesday night type of thing. And when we launched him, we realized really quickly there was like this extreme pushback on the environmental side, which was like really a pause and something surprising to us. It's like, okay, I don't understand why gamers, which are probably like the biggest energy consumers, would have this massive concern around the environment. But like, it got to the point where I was like, I don't even know if we should continue pushing this project forward because there's so much backlash from this community and really so much confusion on, what NFTs even are, that like there's an education piece missing. And frankly, like, what we were working with was not probably what that community would be receptive to. So that's how Dropper got started, and that's really what led us to Hedera and obviously our work with the HBAR Foundation.
Yeah, so I mean, you're pretty much leading right into it. How exactly are you using Hedera to enhance your business?
Yeah, so great question, Brandon. So at the end of the day, we just needed a chain that essentially fit what the community in like gaming culture is what I call it, what they actually want, right? So it's instead of trying to say, we are going to make this chain work because of some sort of technical feature. It was really like, okay, let's find a solution that covers a couple bases. One is the environmental piece that was like extremely important, like shockingly, and the other thing was transaction speed. When we launched on stuff like Polygon, etc., like just having people purchase ETH, bridge it over to Polygon, it was like this absolute disaster for first-time purchasers. So it was just really trying to say like, who's trying to make it simple for as an on-ramp to crypto, number one, and then number two, who is who actually fits this environmental friendly piece? Like that, it's shocking to me as somebody in the gaming space that was like a primary concern. It was basically the number one thing that we had to figure out if NFTs were going to work. So I think, there's a lot of excitement around blockchain gaming, but there's not a lot of excitement about blockchain gaming in the current gaming community, and those are like the two biggest reasons, right? Like gamers are used to transactions in real time where it doesn't even blink. There's no problem with a transaction speed. And then two, like the environment piece is like shockingly big narrative for us. So those are two reasons why we found Hedera. I thought it was a really good fit and started to play around, build on it, and then that led us to where we are today.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, Alex, we'll go to you. What about Dropper caught the eye of the HBAR Foundation?
Well, I think it's in terms of the Dropper team, it is that existing relationship and understanding of the gaming ecosystem. Certainly, when I talk to game developers, they're a bit exasperated or exhausted that there are so many blockchain developers building games, and that's not to say that there's not going to be some good projects coming out of that. But game development, the whole esports industry, these are communities that really understand their audience, really understand what they're doing. You can't really just jump in and start throwing around blockchain. So certainly that was a core kind of attraction. This team who have actually built kind of esports management platforms, they have the relationships with the teams, and they're moving. I'd say a native Web3 project, but essentially they're moving an existing business into DLT, working with NFTs. And those are the teams we like to work with because they have an appreciation for this new technology, but they really understand the core industry that they're coming from. And I think on top of that as well, gamers, as we've seen in the response to the announcement of Lithos, our new kind of AAA game partner doing NFTs, there is this kind of knee-jerk reaction to NFTs. So you need to be working with teams who have that the respect and relationship with the gaming industry. And I think the other part that Eric mentioned was all of these new users trying to engage with someone like Clicks. And I think across the board, it's roughly, I'd say 75% is the number kind of reported of new users when these platforms are launched. And by new users, I mean people who aren't familiar with crypto at all. So often we're looking at the current crypto landscape and we're seeing where the liquidity lies, where the user bases are. But actually, the real opportunity and the purpose of the Metaverse Fund is to identify projects which are going to bring users en masse from Web3 and from Web2 into Web3. And Dropper demonstrates that there's a huge user base of people who still have to be exposed to NFTs, and those NFTs need to have utility. And there's no one better to kind of work on what that utility would be than a team who actually understands and has relationships with esports and game developers to kind of help shape that utility.
Yeah, bring Hedera to a new audience. Makes a lot of sense. So, Eric, back to you. Can you walk us through the specific tools that you offer to developers and builders in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best way to frame this is like we initially are really going to be a launch pad for new projects. Essentially, what we want to do is create incentives for teams, players, top streamers, developers and publishers, anyone who's basically looking to try and engage in Web3 technology and do what I call brand activations, leveraging essentially a launch pad. I think at our core, that's what we're going to be early on. There's a lot of other marketplace technology that is coming to place in the not so distant future, as well as platforms that are already live. So I think our marketplace will come, but it's not like a big rush because there's already so much exposure to marketplace platforms within the Hedera network. So essentially, early on, it's just going to be a launch pad. Our medium to long-term vision is really just to basically create a bit of an API economy that enables a developer, a publisher, an esport organization to be able to pull in their own web-based applications where they can deploy NFTs within their own, probably currently their Web2 environment. So we think this idea of, NFTs is a connected gate. So if you hold, an NFT to esport team X, that when you connect into their web experience, you're now able to get, behind the scenes. I think that's one application. The other application is like the idea of like little mini marketplaces, essentially tools to basically enable, whether you're a developer, publisher, an esport org, a team, et cetera, just the tools that you need to go off and deploy your own little mini experience of a launchpad and digital marketplace, but niche down into your own environment. So I think for us, that's the medium to long-term vision. Early on, we're just going to be a launchpad experimenting with a whole bunch of teams, orgs, players, streamers, devs and pubs to basically figure out, how is this going to work, as well as, tournament organizers and everything else. What we're trying to do is bring gaming culture into this new Web3 world. But right now, that bridge hasn't been built. So I think our launchpad is really designed to be that bridge early on. And then I think medium to long term, it's really just giving people the tool set that they need to be able to embed, DLT technology into their digital experience, whether that's web, mobile, or in-game, game-based.
Yeah, it's a great vision for Dropper. And I mean, we're hearing about Web3 all over the place. I'm just curious, what's your vision for Web3 overall?
I just think Web3 is just the evolution of the internet. I think like Web1 connected everyone to everyone, right? That's kind of like social media platforms. Web2 brought commerce online, right? And I worked in e-com in a past life. And the global payments industry is a confusing space at best. And it's basically built on old, confusing rails. And that forced the emergence of, I think, what Web3 is, which is essentially it's built bringing digital currency and digital assets online. And I think that's really all you're seeing. I don't think this is like some crazy, it's not a revolution. It's just an evolution. It's digital currency is being brought online. The idea of being able to transact in real time with meaningful dollars versus, funny money, which exists in every game today. I always tell this story of like when I was like a 16-year-old kid, I used to play this game called Final Fantasy 11. It's like an MMO, like World of Warcraft, etc. When I basically got bored of playing the game after a while, and I went and I sold my account on some random internet forum, sold it for a couple $1,000. And I was like, a 16-year-old kid. I was going to buy my first car with that, some help from my grandma at the time. But the whole idea was like I made a couple $1,000. Like that was 16 years ago today, right? So like the reality is like I just see what Web3 is enabling that in a meaningful way. So it's not just an account that you have to go sell. Maybe you can sell your digital assets. Maybe the in-game currency can actually be, you can pull that out when you're done playing and exchange it for, US dollars or whatever you want to do to get out. I think the current gaming ecosystem exists as like this rental economy, right? Like you buy a skin in Fortnite, do you really own it? No, it's like you're renting it on your character. You can't move or trade it. And I even think from a regulatory perspective, some of these ideas are going to get challenged from regulators. For like, you're telling them they're buying something, but you can't, they don't have any rights attached to it, right? So I think all that I see as Web3, especially when it relates to gaming, is really just giving gamers rights and then like the tools back so they can actually live in like whatever you want to call it, like the metaverse or whatever. They can actually go and monetize their time in these digital worlds in a meaningful way, rather than just making them huge time sinks and huge monetary sinks with the ability to get zero capital out of them. So I think there's a problem we're trying to solve. It's a problem we're trying to solve. And our vision for Web3 is it's just digital currency and digital assets coming online, right? It's not a revolution. It's really just an evolution. And how people are going to adapt, it'll be, slowly at first, experimentally, and then probably very rapidly, right? Very similar to how I think e-commerce was brought online.
Are there any specific future projects or partnerships that you're working on that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I think like what I'll do is I'll hint to a few, because I think what we want to do is announce them in July as we build up to a big launch. So I'll kind of tease them. The first is an esport tournament platform. They hold licenses to a whole bunch of AAA gaming titles, and essentially what they're doing is coming on, and they're going to be launching a whole bunch of so like 24/7. I don't want to call them leagues because it's more of like a private ranked ladder where gamers are going to be able to compete online. And the real application for them is being able to bring esports data into an immutable environment, right? One of the biggest problems is if you go and look at esports gaming data, you're looking on like Wikipedias. And if you know anything about wikis, those can be subject to change. What these platforms are really popular for is basically coaches, esport orgs, teams, etc., recruiting players. So basically by giving them sort of like this immutable consensus of data that they can then go query and access and sift through, I think there's going to be a pretty cool opportunity for essentially just immutable data on Hedera's DLT. I think that's going to be sort of like the first evolution, rather than trying to like create some sort of crazy tokenized play their own thing and ruffling feathers with devs and pubs. I think the idea there is really just to bring data on chain in a way that an application where it's like, whoa, yeah, that makes sense. Like we see the value there. And I think this is one of the things that people get away from, where it's like, how can you provide value first on NFT first or something like that, right?
Sure.
So that's one project. There's a whole host of like essentially esport teams, top streamers, etc., that we're doing activations with us over the course of the next 6 months. There's even basically like a players association guild, where basically what they're doing is going off and pulling a whole bunch of top players, streamers, etc., in who want to basically create an ecosystem where, like, if you're an aspiring esport player, like, where do you go? I don't know where to go. Does anybody know where to go? No, but essentially an easy entrance point to say, like, hey, here's how you can interact with some pro players. Here's how you can, have an NFT that gives you access into this community. And by having that, now you have access into this like esports community that can basically help everyone, pave a pathway if you're not in one of these communities, like, hey, how do we become a pro player in Fortnite or Apex Legends or any of these big titles? Basically being able to interact with some of the pros in those titles to be able to say, like, hey, here's how you do it, here's the grind, here's here's the DPI in my mouse that I use, like all that type of fun stuff. So
yeah.
I think like what you can expect is like a robust bunch of projects coming on that will interact with a whole bunch of AAA gaming titles, but aren't necessarily like what everybody expects. It's like, oh, are you making a marketplace for Fortnite assets? It's like, no, man, like that is 3 to 5 years away, and the people who are going to do that are going to be the projects that basically interact and work with what's relevant in gaming culture, and that's what we're focused on right now.
Sure. Thank you for teasing that out. I know Alex was laughing because I'm always trying to pull forward the announcements and try to get as much information as I can. And Alex, we'll move on to you. We've had several announcements in the Hedera gaming space. What do we still need to round out our gaming ecosystem?
I think, and the reason why I was laughing was because I know the community don't really like announcements, but these are very much around the corner, and I'm laughing, I'm sort of chuckling because I know which kind of partnerships that Eric and his team have, and these are this will kind of demonstrate the trust and the relationships that they have in the space. I think what we need. To be honest, on the sort of on Hedera network with regards to the gaming industry is stuff being live, stuff that is tangible, that people can get their hands on, and that they can be engaging, really seeing what the Hedera network is beyond really nice stats around throughput, TPS, environmental impact. We want to see people going, oh, Clicks is a great streamer, I'm a fan of his, I want to get one of these video clips. Oh, this is an NFT. This seems to be very seamless. This seems to be a normal experience. Should I be concerned? No concerns around this Hedera technology. So I think that's what we need to see. We need to move to a point where stuff is live, is on the network, and everyone wants to see the TPS rising up. We want to see more kind of account entities on the network. And I believe Eric and his team are going to deliver that. And of course, adjacent to that are more kind of nice brand partnerships. But the whole DLT industry, saturated with announcements, saturated with partnerships, seeing stuff live is going to be really cool.
Yeah, that's not the answers I was expecting, but that's exactly what the community wants to hear. We really do need to move to a point where we're putting a lot of these use cases on the network. So it's certainly appreciated. Eric, so how can developers and the rest of the community get involved with Dropper?
Yeah, absolutely. I think early on we're gonna do like a founders mint, probably do like 2,000 different assets where we want to kind of build our inaugural core community. I think that's the first thing you'll see coming from us, and that's how we'd like the people who are passionate about gaming, about esports, about what we're doing on this network to essentially come and acclimate with us and get inside a Discord and really help us build the foundations of a community. I think Web3, obviously it's community first, not product first. So obviously starting there. And then as for devs and pubs, it's just like ongoing conversations. It's, reach out to me on Twitter, reach out to Dropper NFT on Twitter, reach out to us and like start having conversations. I think from our standpoint, as people start to see some of these launches coming, live, and as Alex alluded to, it's not about like doing an NFT so people can play like Ponzi musical chairs on it. It's about creating an experience that people can then engage with, and it just so happens to be built on on leveraging NFT technology. So people who believe what I believe, which is We want to create a sustainable long-term ecosystem. We want to do that in a meaningful way. Like, those are the people we want to talk to, people who are interested in trying to, like, leverage NFTs to make a quick buck. Probably not the best people to be speaking with. I think at the end of the day, we're really focused on trying to say, how do we bring gaming culture, this AAA gaming environment, really into an ecosystem? That's a really big challenge. It's really hard to do. And those are the people that we're interested in speaking with, the people that see the future of Web3, get excited about this idea of digital assets, digital ownership, but also understand, the massive hurdles that's going to essentially take. So, Twitter's the best way to find us. You can flip us a note on our website, etc. Those are all great places to kind of get in touch with us. And from there, it's really just, seeing if it's a good mutual fit. I think there's a whole bunch of incentives we can provide for aspiring developers, publishers, esport orgs that are looking to launch with us to help enable them come on and offset some of the hurdles that they face. So I think that's who and that's where.
All right, so we'll flash your Twitter handle up on the screen here so everybody knows where to reach you. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on to the community before we let you go?
No, just thanks for the warm reception. We've had a really fantastic reception. Met with some skepticism, which of course we welcome. We know that what we're doing has been talked about a lot. People have talked about Web3 gaming, all this stuff, but I think that we're up to the challenge, and we certainly welcome a host of opinions, from skepticism to all the really fantastic positive feedback that we've received. So I just want to thank everyone for the warm welcome to the HBAR community.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming. Alex, is there anything else you'd like to pass on?
I think really in summary, Eric's Dropper's partners are in good hands with the Dropper platform and the sister platform that we'll be hopefully hearing more about. I would recommend people perhaps tune in to the panel that Eric and I did at NFT NYC once that's online, kind of extended conversation and a bit of alpha leak there, hopefully. But just as these partners are in good hands with Dropper, I think the Hedera gaming ecosystem is going to be in good hands as well. And one thing that I constantly see, again, coming back to game developers, all their questions and concerns about NFTs, they are looking for a rarefied space to launch their own projects. Serious game developers, they don't want to be next to the block lords and the coin warriors and the crypto fighters. They want to go, okay, if this is legitimate, where's the nice space for sophisticated space to launch my NFTs, and to discuss how these NFTs can sit on a ledger and not just become redundant after a few months. So really excited to see what this project evolves into.
Makes perfect sense to me. Guys, again, thank you so much for coming. And Eric, good luck with Dropper.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.